and any form of abuse that tend to victimize children. Every year, 1 million children are believed to be exploited by means of child trafficking, child pornography, especially with the uncontrolled rise of the social networking media among children and sexual exploitation of children in travel and tourism destinations. In mitigating this felony against children, personnel responsible for the rights of children call for concerted efforts to halt these practices.
The safety and welfare of children is everybody's business. You could be a neighbor, a friend, a parent, a relative, a childminder, a teacher, a doctor, or working for an organization which has contact with children and young people. Therefore, it should be a collective responsibility of all to ensure that children are safe from all forms of abuse and exploitation, and to take pledge for the creation of enabling atmospheres for the lives, survival, and development of all children.
Given the recent UNICEF's 2003 report, the Gambia is a vulnerable target for sex tourism given the number of unidentified, unscrupulous suspected pedophiles entering the country in search for a low-profile location and excuse to commit these crimes with impunity by taking advantage of the poverty-stricken families. The Minister of Tourism and Culture, Fatuma's Job, believes that child protection is a cornerstone of her ministry's policy, and there are legal frameworks ratified to prosecute perpetrators.
Over the years, as you know, the government has put in place legal frameworks aimed at promoting the rights of children as well as their protection from all forms of abuse and exploitation. And for your information, Ms. Job, we have recently started the process of amending the Tourism Offences Act of 2003. We felt that the act was not stringent enough. We have now, together with the Ministry of Justice, amended the act to make provision for a 24-hour court. 24 hours court in that if there is any incident of child abuse, for instance, there will be a magistrate available to make sure that case is heard, because most of the time there is an incident, by the time it reaches the court, the tourist already left the country. So this is in the process of being enacted by the National Assembly. It was approved by Cabinet last week.
In the Gambia, there are laws provided for the protection of children, notably the Tourism Offences Act 2003 and other relevant laws determined to punish any person who sexually abuses a child with a hefty imprisonment term. The Basin Job and activists demanded these laws be upheld by the Tourism Ministry.
I call on all service providers in the tourism sector to embrace the Gambia Tourism Code of Conduct. I also challenge the people working in the tourism industry to be very vigilant and to report cases of abuse and exploitation of children in those settings. I call on the Ministry of Tourism and Culture to recognize the existence of sexual exploitation of children in the tourism industry and to monitor and ensure the implementation of the Tourism Code of Conduct as well as the Tourism Offences Act to protect children from all sorts of sexual exploitation.
With the practice of such felony in the rise, collective and community action is needed to prevent and end commercial sexual exploitation of children in destination Gambia. Buba SMCC, GRTS.
Well, we now take our first break. The news continues right after. Welcome back. Syrian opposition leaders say they are disappointed by American President Barack Obama's decision to seek congressional permission for a military strike on Syria. They say they can't understand how you can promise help and then change your mind in the last minute. President Barack Obama made the announcement Saturday as UN weapon inspectors left Syria. But as we hear in this report, the US President made a decision at the very last minute.
On political theater, it was high drama just past high noon. as President Obama told the world he had pulled back from the brink of a military strike against Syria.
I will seek authorization for the use of force from the American people's representatives in Congress.
Aides to the president say Mr. Obama decided to go in a different direction at almost the last minute. At approximately 6 p.m. Friday, the president made the stunning change in plans to seek congressional authorization and then went for a walk. A 45-minute walk, in fact, with his chief of staff, Dennis McDonough. At approximately 7 p.m., the president announced his decision to his national security staff, sparking a heated debate. He then started to spread the word, calling Vice President Biden, Secretary of State John Kerry, and Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. Saturday morning, Mr. Obama convened a principals meeting with top national security and intelligence officials to finalize the decision.
The question is, what are we collectively, what are we in the world going to do about it?
Just hours before the president's abrupt move, Secretary Kerry had made a passionate case for urgent action.
Instead of being tucked safely in their beds at home, we saw rows of children lying side by side, sprawled on a hospital floor, all of them dead from Assad's gas.
But aides say what Kerry and the rest of the president's team did not know is that Mr. Obama had been privately kicking around the idea of seeking approval from Congress for days. As Kerry was turning up the heat, the president seemed to be turning it down.
I am very clear that the world generally is war-weary. Certainly the United States it has gone through over a decade of war. The American people understandably want us to be focused on the business of rebuilding our economy here and putting people back to work. And I assure you nobody ends up being more war-weary than me.
As it turns out, administration officials say the president was listening to members of Congress who wanted in on the process.
Well, I think it's incumbent to always obey the Constitution. The rule of law is something our country's founded on, and I would ask Congress to come together.
The 64 members of us who signed our letter want to make sure Congress is called back in session, debate the issues, the facts, and then vote on whether or not we should engage militarily.
So on Saturday, the president got back on the phone, calling House Speaker John Boehner and other congressional leaders.
Here's my question for every member of Congress and every member of the global community. What message will we send if a dictator can gas hundreds of children to death in plain sight and pay no price?
Just minutes later, the president departed the White House with Biden to play a round of golf, leaving administration officials scrambling to show a united front. Despite that fierce discussion inside the West Wing, aides say the president's team is now fully on board. As for the defense secretary, one senior U.S. official said, as a former senator whose views on the limits of war are well known, it's not hard for Chuck Hagel to agree with the president. Another official said of Kerry, no concerns. He was in the Senate for 29 years and has made consultation with Congress a huge priority since he became Secretary of State. The debate that counts is the one to come in Congress, where lawmakers from both parties still have questions.
In my view, U.S. military force is justified only to protect the vital national security interest of the United States. And to date, the administration has not focused on those interests.
I don't see where America is threatened. I don't see where our national security is threatened. And perhaps between now and the time we get back on September the 9th, the president will have information that would allow the Congress to effectively see where this danger is.
While a strike on Syria could spark retaliation against Israel, the closest American ally in the region, it could face attacks from Syria's supporters such as the Syrian military group Hezbollah. As Jim Clancy reports from Jerusalem, all options are being considered.
Action in Syria raised new concerns and some new options in Israel. Former military intelligence chief Amos Yadlin proposed a possible move by Russia that could spare its ally Syria a punishing strike. Russian President Vladimir Putin is the only man that can stop the attack, not by sending Russian warships or a Russian force, said Yadlin, but by dealing with what makes President Obama concerned with chemical weapons. Putin can come up with a proposal, he said. I will take out the Syrian chemical weapons from Syria. Assad will not be able to use chemical weapons anymore. Despite its obvious merits, the proposal lacked any inkling of support from Moscow or Damascus.